Good morning. My name is Shelley Volsch. I am a certified professional dog trainer and I have my bachelor's in psychology. This presentation is on dogs, how humans are applying parenting strategies to dogs, and what it means to the dog training community. So, who am I and what do I know? Like I said, I'm a certified professional dog trainer. I've taken the national certification exam. I've also completed my BA in psychology, and I will be continuing on to my master's this fall in anthropology. My focus is anthrozoology, which is the study of human-animal interactions. My research is going to primarily focus around the human-canine bond. I also have a diploma from e-training for dogs in canine nutrition and fitness. I have studied and worked under some of the certified applied animal behaviorists, and they're kind of the top of the food chain when it comes to animal behavior in this country. And I've worked on a variety of behavior and training issues with dogs and some cats. I've been doing this now for a little over 7 years. So what does some of the research tell us about dogs? Dogs are the most common pet. Dr. Peter Gray and PhD candidate Sharon Young out of the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, did a cross-cultural survey back in 2011. And this was published in Anthrozoos. And what they found is that human investment in pets potentially constitutes a major challenge to evolutionary theory, which anticipates that individuals will not sacrifice their own fitness. And here we are crossing the species boundary. Basically, what they found is that they were fascinated by the fact that people are keeping more and more pets. And this goes against the idea that we take care of ourselves first, because pet keeping requires a lot of altruism. And cross-culturally, dogs are actually the most common pet. And on top of that, we're parenting our dogs. Again, University of Nevada, Las Vegas, this was an interdisciplinary study done between the social psychology department as well as the anthropology department. Again, Dr. Gray was involved. And the study was on raising canine, cross-species parallels in parental investment. Basically, what they found is that humans appear to be applying their parenting strategies to adopted dogs. Whether they got their dogs as a puppy or they got their dogs at the shelter, they're actually applying all those same mechanisms that we use with our children. In addition, they found that adoptive dog parents, the people who chose to bring the dog into their home, actually form stronger attachment and invest more, both in emotional as well as financial resources, than the dog's step parents do. And this again is consistent with what we see in the human literature, where biological parents tend to invest more and have stronger attachments and bonds with their biological children as opposed to most step parents. Now, just like in the human literature, this is not to say that there isn't some level of step parents that do invest as much as the biological or adoptive dog parents. But in general, the biological or the adopted dog parents do invest more than the step parents. And finally, we find that there's a lot of affiliative physiology spillover. What does this mean? This means that all those hormones, the oxytocin release that we've all heard of, the endorphin and dopamine receptors that are involved in creating a bond between mother and child or father and child, all those same physiological reactions are occurring with our dogs as well. And they found this to be really fascinating because, again, we're crossing a species barrier, and this kind of connection and altruism and investment in something that's not biologically ours kind of goes against a lot of what the evolutionary data would suggest. Because dogs are becoming more and more surrogate children, there's an entire industry built around pet parents. There's been a steady increase since 1994, and the American Pet Products Association has a 2013 estimate of $55.53 billion being spent in the pet industry. This includes everything from food to vet care to collars and leashes, crates, toys, the whole gamut of anything you could possibly buy for your pet. But we found that there's an increased spending involved here. And this, interestingly enough, is regardless of the economic downturn of the past few years. Even as people have lost their jobs, even as people have had, financial hardship, they still continue to invest in their pets as though they're children, especially dogs. We've seen increase in the quality of food on the market, and people are buying more and more of that quality food. We're seeing improved veterinary care. There's a lot of sharing going on at this point between, dog veterinary care, dog medicine, and what we see being done with humans. And the more research we're finding, the more that we're doing, we're discovering that dogs can suffer a lot of the same diseases we do, everything from diabetes to stomach ulcers. And this is new because we used to always think, well, they're dogs, they must be different. And in reality, we're finding they're not that different from us. And a large percentage of owners regularly report their dogs as family members or best friends. The more people I talk to as I get ready to do my research, the more people I find, oh, my dog is my kid. I'm not having children, I'm having dogs. I make that joke all the time. My kid's woof. Um, or you hear something like, oh, my dog is my best friend. My dog is my husband. He's the best husband I've ever had. You hear things like, my dog was my brother. We were more like siblings. My stepson even makes the joke that his siblings woof. So it's becoming an increased change in our culture. Um, that our dogs are taking this next domestication and evolutionary step. They're coming out of the yards, they're coming out of the fields, they're coming out of the barn, and more of them are coming into our home. And not even just into our home, an increased number of them are coming into our beds. Some more things about dogs as kids. This is actually a very effective analogy for dog trainers. Um, I've used it myself on many occasions when I'm talking to somebody about their 8-month-old. We've got a juvenile or adolescent puppy who's just going crazy, going through that last stage of teething with those molars falling out. And, I don't understand why my dog can't just, lay down and sleep while I'm at work. And one of the analogies I frequently use in that situation is, you wouldn't let your 2-year-old toddler loose in the house for 8 hours because inevitably they're going to get bored, they're going to get curious, they're going to investigate, and they're going to get into trouble. And it's the same thing with younger dogs. Sure, when your dog is 5 or 6 years old, and if you've done the training and you've got things for them to burn off energy and going for walks and all those types of things, then yeah, they might be able to handle being loose in the house while you're gone. But just like you wouldn't leave your 2 or 3-year-old at home, it's really tough for an 8-month-old puppy to be loose without making mistakes. And so we're always, more and more, I'm seeing this analogy being used, and it's becoming increasingly effective in helping us work with clients and helping them kind of see the connection, especially since so many of them are seeing their dogs as their kids. Anecdotal evidence and pet parent stories, kind of going along the same ideas. We're always hearing stories. Facebook is filled with these stories about, oh, my dog did this and it was so cute and it was so funny. We're sharing those stories just like we would about our kid. We're sharing that information with each other. There's a meme on Facebook that talks about the fact that, I'm sorry that I don't want to see, 15, the 16th picture of your child, but I'm busy over here planning my dog's wedding. Things like that. There's jokes like that being made all the time, and it's because of this change that's taken place over the last 15 or 20 years. But in reality, we're making this analogy, and what do we know, and how do we know it? Is this scientifically sound as an analogy? Well, research into dogs has grown exponentially over the last decade to decade and a half. And it's because of this phenomenon of dogs coming into the home. And it's because we've spent all this time worrying about non-human primates and apes. And, maybe we're missing the mark because, yeah, they're genetically closer to us, but here's a species that's the first animal we ever domesticated. At minimum, we know they've spent 12 to 13,000 years with us. And because they were already dogs at that point, there's a very big chance that we have another 5 to 10,000 year gap where they were going through the transition from wolf to dog, that we spent time with them there. So here's an animal that has spent, let's just say, 15,000 years with us. We didn't spend 15,000 years in the wild with chimps and bonobos. We spent 15,000 years evolving with dogs. And because of that, we have this increase in research in canine cognition, increase in behavior. We're watching feral dog packs to see what's the difference between feral dogs and what's the difference between wolves. And are we missing the mark when we try to compare our dogs to wolves? And what we're really finding is we've got lots of disciplines involved in this. We've got ethology, which is behavior analysis, behavioral observation of different species. Psychology is involved. Anthropology is involved. Biology, anthrozoology, my field. All these disciplines are involved across the globe trying to figure out what is this phenomenon of dogs and people. And one of the things that we're finding incredibly functional and useful is we're adapting human infant and toddler research models. And we're taking those models to study dogs, and we're going, wow, a lot of the cognitive functioning of a dog is very similar to kids up until 4 or 5 years old in some cases. And these models easily adapt to study a species that can't communicate with us the way we're used to. And we're finding out that the communication system has actually evolved quite eloquently in order to work with us. A perfect example of that is what's called an emotional contagion. Basically, with an emotional contagion, I yawn, you yawn. It's the core behavior of sympathy and empathy. It's that thing that says, I understand that you're you and I'm me, but when you feel something, I feel something similar. And the basic one is considered the yawn, because it's something that everybody, watch your dog yawn and your chances are you're going to yawn. If you yawn or pretend to yawn, chances are your dog is going to yawn back if they were paying attention to you. Person and Madsen studied this and released their findings in Animal Cognition. What they did is they took a protocol that was used with human infants, and they researched the difference between dogs and puppies and their responding to yawning. And they found that both young puppies as well as adult dogs respond to yawning regardless of emotional closeness, which means even if it's not their owner, even if it's somebody that just came into the room, if that person sits down and yawns in amongst a litter of puppies, at least some of the puppies are going to yawn back. They also found that older dogs, adults 2-3 years and older, are more likely to respond to their owner or another housemate or a close family or friend, who frequently visits the home. They're more likely to respond to those people and those other dogs than they are to strangers. And the results support the notion of a developmental increase in dogs' attention to others, an identification of others' emotional states, and suggest that yawn contagion is underpinned by developmental processes shared by humans and other animals. What this means is that we found that even in dogs, just like with children, the older you get, the more you respond to this emotional contagion. The closer bond you have, the more you've developed a relationship, the more likely you are to respond to that emotional contagion of yawning. The empathic-like responding in domestic dogs to distress in humans. Okay, so now we're taking a step beyond just yawning. We're going beyond that reflexive behavior of yawning in response. And we're seeing, this research done in 2012 by Meyer and Kustens. This research was trying to see if do dogs emotionally respond? Do they actually empathically respond beyond just a reflex? Do they make a choice to respond to somebody in distress? Again, they utilized an experimental protocol that was first used with human infants. I believe that this particular protocol they use with infants, and you could almost say young toddlers, because they're more in the 7 to 8 month range. And they found that in these dogs, there was an overwhelming percentage of dogs that responded equally to stress behavior in owner and stranger. Even dogs who were kind of making a point of staying away from the owner and stranger sitting on the couch together, they found that if either of the two people pretended to cry, 15 out of 17 dogs approached. 15 out of 17 dogs came up with their ears back, their bodies were a little down, they were licking, they were nuzzling, They were exhibiting all those behaviors that you could anthropomorphically say, "Are you okay?" They were expressing this show of concern. Like they would do, if a mother went over to a crying puppy and nuzzled to see what's going on and tried to calm the puppy, a lot of those types of behaviors were going on. Interestingly, the two that didn't respond, one of them showed alert behaviors. They were tall, their head was up, their ears were forward, and the other one tried to play bow to the person that was crying, which is interesting to me because a lot of times we see dogs using play bows as a way to break up stress. And so it was possible, from my perspective, there's a possibility that this play bow could have been an attempt to say, "Oh, come on, guy, it's not that bad. Come on, it's okay. Let's play. You'll feel better." But it was interesting that they had such a dramatic difference. Now, the control behavior was just talking and just generally being in the room, and the dog kind of tunes out the talking, and then they would have the either the owner or the stranger would make kind of high pitched noises, not quite like trying to play, almost more like a laugh, and the dogs kind of wiggled at him a little bit and then walked away. But when they pretended to cry, the dogs showed definite signs of what we would call concern. Now, this could be a combination of emotional contagion and reinforcement history. We're not going to rule out the fact that these dogs learned that good things happen when I respond to somebody in distress. But I posit the question, isn't that what we do? Don't we learn that by showing concern, being empathic and caring, we can alleviate the other person's stress, we can alleviate our own stress over them being distressed? So I don't think that this necessarily negates whether or not they were showing empathy. Some other similarities in dogs and children. We've got some research done. Dogs steal, and they know when we're looking. They know when we're not. If you put a dog in the dark and you highlight the person in the room but not the food, they'll still steal the food. If you highlight the food and not the person in the room, the dog's going to take a lot longer to think about whether or not they're going to steal the food, because you can watch them steal it. There's some very interesting information there about dogs who, if you're not looking at them, if you're in the same room with the lights on and you turn away, do they walk up and steal the food? So we know they do. We know they're a little bit of an opportunist that way. It's just like kids with the cookie jar. We all have seen or heard the story of the kid who kind of peeked around the corner of the kitchen to make sure mom wasn't looking and then snuck over and grabbed an Oreo. Dogs can discriminate faces, not only in their own species. They can discriminate amongst their own species, but they can also discriminate amongst ours. Honestly, to any pet owner, this is not really a surprise. My dog knows the difference between mommy, daddy, and grandma. If I say get daddy, my dog goes running over to my husband. If I say where's grandma, my dog goes looking for my mom. And it's interesting. They've used research where they actually do, it's called an inverted image. And what they do is they flip the picture upside down to see if they can still recognize the face, if they're still capable of organizing the information to realize that that's the same picture as this other picture to receive the reward, all those types of things. Same exact thing that we use with toddlers, and their response rate was almost identical to toddlers. Dogs understand basic fairness. Brian Hare and Vanessa Woods, they are out of the Duke Canine Cognition Lab, just recently released a book called The Genius of Dogs, and one of the things they had in that book was information about dogs understanding the basic of fairness. They understand when he got more than I did. If you have two dogs sitting and you give one a treat, not the other one is going to look at you like, where's mine? They're gonna wait. You walk away, they're going to stay in that sitting position or follow you going, hey, you forgot me. They also understand if they watch you drop, 6 treats behind a cardboard, but when you lift the cardboard, there's only 2, they may not know that the difference is 4, but they know there's a difference. They know that there's not as much there as there should be. And there's that pause and there's that confusion trying to understand what happened. And of course, as any dog trainer or dog owner will tell you, dogs can choose to say mine or share. Resource guarding is a huge problem. It's something that we are constantly dealing with, whether it's resource guarding from the new baby who's just started crawling around resource guarding from the owner, resource guarding from another dog. Dogs are capable of saying mine, and they're very good at it. And one of the things that we can do to help them in the future is learn to respect that response of mine. Don't push them into biting. But then give them, say, okay, I need to teach my dog to share. I need to teach my dog how good it is to share, just like you do with children. You know what? If you play ball nicely with Susie, I'm going to give you a cookie afterwards. Same thing with dogs. If you let, Buddy walk by you while you're chewing on your bone, I'm going to give you a piece of chicken too. Isn't that nice to share? Isn't that great? Little by little, we get there. Some information about emotions between children and dogs. While it appears dogs do not have the language skills for complex emotions, neither do most human children until close to the age of 8. Human children, when they're young, they don't have the experience, the learning history, the language to really comprehend things like guilt. The really complex emotions like, premeditation, those types of things are just not really there until about 7 or 8 when adrenarche first kicks in and we have an emotional shift and we have a cognitive shift that takes place. Same thing with dogs. Granted, dogs never get past it. They're kind of there their whole life. But so far, we don't have any data to suggest that they have the capability of premeditating and feeling guilt and feeling these complex emotions of shame and things like that. They function on the basics. And it doesn't make me happy, doesn't make me sad, doesn't make me angry. Just like a child. Me. There's this little bit of a me function that happens when we're first little. We don't have the capability of seeing the other the same way. And it's kind of the same thing with dogs. We may find that changes as we do more research. I know Alexandra Horowitz is doing some great research on guilt right now, but so far she hasn't found anything to suggest that dogs are capable of this. Also, self-conscious evaluative emotions do not develop in children until the ages of 3 or 4. They don't develop in dogs either. So that same kind of thing. They're not, again, that whole idea of shame. A dog can't really feel ashamed of themselves. They can give us appeasement signals. They can do whatever it takes to try to get us to calm down and seem like they're sorry. And sorry is different than shame. So you could probably argue that they are capable of feeling sorry. Like, oops, I didn't mean to catch you when we were playing. I'm sorry I caught your finger with a toy. They're definitely capable of kind of, dropping and giving you that. But I don't think they're not really in that, like, oh, I meant to do that, or anything like that. I don't think that they're at that level, just like the really young children. But much like younger children, dogs feel joy, curiosity, and fear. They don't have the self-control over behavior and extreme reactions. Just like children, we need to teach them that. So again, a lot of comparisons here going on here between younger children and dogs. The cognitive development and the emotional reactions and things are there, but we have to teach them. You can't always jump up on people because you're happy. You can't run around going, Mom, 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 I'm so excited, Mom, 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 Mom. You need to have some patience, calm down, be quiet. Yes, Bobby, what did you want to tell me? It's the same thing with dogs. We teach them to sit and be calm, and now you can be pet. Interspecific bonding. This is one of my favorite things. Humans and dogs have extremely similar biochemistry. Again, those core emotions, joy, anger, love, fear. Fear is a big one. Fear's an area, fear and stress are areas that we really need to put a lot more research into because of the implications in dog training, which is what we're going to get to in a few more slides here. Humans have evolved a deep-seated biological drive to nurture small, dependent things. This is from Patricia McConnell's For the Love of a Dog. She got into a lot of biology and biochemistry in this book, talking about where these core emotions come from, how this bond is being formed. And we've developed this biological drive to nurture small things, and in response, dogs have evolved to read and respond to human behavior and emotion. We've evolved to communicate with each other, and sometimes we need to stop worrying about who's in charge, start paying attention to what we're really saying to each other about our feelings. So, Dogs and kids, very similar, especially up to the ages of 3 or 4 for humans. Here's some comparisons in how we're teaching our dogs and how we're teaching our children. Homeschooling. Mom keeps the kid at home and teaches them, sometimes it's dad, teaches them their math, their history, their biology at home. This is like training your dog all on your own. This is like saying, you know what, this is my 5th dog. I know how to teach sit. I know how to teach stay. Those are the only things I'm really concerned with. I can potty train on my own, so I'm going to just go ahead and teach him on my own. I'm not going to worry about a professional. Daycare environments. A lot of people work and their child goes to daycare for even a half a day. Very similar going on with dogs. We've got doggy daycares opening up all over the place across this country. And a lot of the really good ones are being run by trainers and behavior people who can understand how to break up the groups to make sure that the dogs are interacting appropriately, to make sure that nobody's being a bully, to make sure that we're learning proper social skills, how to play nicely with each other, how to wait at the gate while somebody goes in and out of the play yard, how to be patient, taking naps, making sure that we're waiting for our snacks. All sounds like child daycare, doesn't it? Starting to see a lot of similarities growing here. Play dates. Just like the days, the mommy and me clubs and the gymboree clubs that get together, and sometimes it's an organized group. Sometimes it's just a group of friends of 4 or 5 women and moms and dads who happen to have children of the same age. But they get together for a couple of hours, and the kids can interact and play, and they can learn to socialize with their peers, and we can socialize with our peers, and everybody can share stories about what's going on with, Judy getting into preschool and all these types of things. We're seeing that happening more and more with dogs too. It's one of my favorite things when as I was training, I would say, you know what, rather than daycare, why don't you find a really good friend of yours that's got an appropriate dog that they can get together and play with. It's always good when you've got family that's got a dog who understands how to socialize, and you can just get dogs together to play with each other. Smaller groups are less arousing. And then, of course, there's professional training. Professional training is like taking your kid to school. It's sending your kid to school for the day if you do day training. It's making sure that you're helping your kid with your homework at home at night. And these are group classes or private lessons, basic manners, or even advanced behavior problems, going back to that resource guarding issue, things like that. These are all things that are out there. This is what I was involved in a lot. I did some group classes, but a lot of it was, oops, we missed the window, and now we have XYZ behavior problem. And a lot of times those are things that you just can't necessarily do on your own unless you've got a lot of experience with animals. And so it's not uncommon to find, at 8-9 months with your adopted puppy that, oh, okay, I need a little help here. And that's okay, because that's really no different than, I would never be able to teach my stepson advanced physics. As much as I love the stars and I love physics, there's only so much I'd be able to show him. So we're going to go a little bit here from the kids and children into training methods. So there's controversy over training methods right now. The idea of positive or progressive training, clicker training, lure reward, plenty in life is free. This idea of focusing on what we like and doing our best to extinguish what we don't like. It's growing again, but it's still in the minority. And that's unfortunate, because with children, we're doing more and more of that, trying to encourage the creativity, trying to let them make their own small mistakes, but more importantly, teaching them to make the right choices from the beginning. Traditional training is still in the majority. Waiting for the dog to make a mistake and correcting it. Trying to go walking with a dog, and when he pulls, giving him a collar correction and teaching him, no, you need to be by my side. That's still in the majority, and it's unfortunate. This particular type of training method really developed during the World Wars. And it's unfortunate because we came a long way and we were starting to get past it. And it just, for some reason, there was a resurgence of it. Dominance and alpha theory, this is a huge resurgence. It's part of what's supporting this traditional training method of having to get control over the dog. Rather than rather than supporting the dog and teaching the dog to make good choices and be, an appropriate being in our world and showing them what to do correctly. We're seeing this resurgence in you have to get control of your dog. From the beginning, you need to tell them who's boss. You need to be in charge. Almost more military than parenting. And that seems very odd to me since more of us are parenting our dogs. Why is there a resurgence in this military, almost corporal punishment type of training? And then, of course, we've got the shock and stim collar training. Realistically, this is just, in the most cases, this is really just traditional training with a new tool. We're using a remote collar to provide a stimulus to correct the dog rather than a leash with a prong collar or a choke chain or even a flat collar. A flat collar can still deliver a pretty strong correction. So those are kind of the 4 basic training methods that are out there. And the Association of Pet Dog Trainers, on their website, they actually have a couple different mission statements or position statements on training methods. And one of the things they say here is that physical or psychological intimidation hinders effective training and damages the relationship between humans and dogs. And since my interest is on how we can help develop and support and nurture that relationship, I find it a little concerning that we have this resurgence in these more physical or intimidation type methods. Okay, let's get a little deeper into the methods. The dominance dilemma. It's a popular media rebirth. Not going to name names because realistically it depends on what country you're in. But more and more of these TV shows showing collar corrections, showing what's called an alpha roll, which is where you grab the dog by the scruff and push them down on the ground and you don't let them up until they stop struggling. In some cases, there's some yelling involved. Some of these trainers will tell you got to wait till the dog pees and shows submission, all that kind of stuff. Realistically, the idea is we're physically and emotionally intimidating our dogs. And despite having been comprehensively discredited by biologists and veterinary behaviorists over a quarter of a century ago, this goes back to Ian Dunbar in the 80s, this idea still has a surprisingly wide currency. It's based on this myth that dogs are wolves in prettier clothing. Well, I shouldn't say prettier, in cuter clothing, in fuzzy teddy bear clothing. They're not. We know now that dogs have thousands of years of removal from wolves. They are a different canid species. In contrast to all of this, Brian Hare talks about the survival of the friendliest. He says, look, when we look at feral dogs, whether they're roaming in loose groups or formal packs, the leader isn't the one who intimidates everybody and takes charge. The leader's the popular guy. The leader's the guy who says, come on over here. Look what I found. Let's share. Wag, wag, wag. Let's play. It's more about amicability than control. Shock collars and training collars. This one's going to be real short and sweet. Karen overall, you can see here she's got a gazillion initials and certifications after her name. She's a veterinary behaviorist. She's a PhD. She released an article in the Journal of Veterinary Behavior called Considerations for Shock and Training Collars, Concerns from and for the Working Dog Community. And the reason that she started with the working dog community is because everybody says these are hard dogs, these are drivey dogs, these are dogs that you must have control over. And she said, simply put, when these adversarial methods are used on my patients, they become more anxious, more pathologic, and potentially more aggressive and dangerous. You're not fixing the problem, you're not controlling the dog, you're creating a ticking time bomb. Positive, not permissive. This is the progressive positive movement. I'm going to let you in on a secret. I'm a crossover trainer. I used to use prong collars. I can give a collar correction with the best of them. That's where I came from. And then I started to research and read and watch and pay attention to what was going on between myself and my dogs, people around me and their dogs. And I crossed over. I crossed over into this idea of if I focus on the good, I can get more of that. Rather than focusing on playing whack-a-mole with all the bad things, if I focus on the good things, I can get more and more good things. Expectations and boundaries still exist. This does not mean that, my dogs run willy-nilly and have control of the house. They still understand because I've rewarded things I like, and I've managed or controlled the environment for things that I don't. For example, if my dogs are going to spend the afternoon barking and being idiots on the back porch, I don't let them go out on the back porch. Something's out there that's causing them to make a whole bunch of hoopla, and so they're not going to be out there to cause problems. They're going to be in the house instead. They're going to be in a corner, separate corners, chewing on their kongs, chewing on their cow ears, whatever it is I have for them, to give them a little bit of an outlet for whatever that energy is that's got them bugged. The idea here is that you're a benevolent leader. You're a parent. You don't have to dominate. You don't have to control. You have to guide. We have to guide dogs to make better choices. We cannot be on top of our dogs all day long, 100% of the time. It's impossible. So we have to set them up to make the right choices on their own and get rewarded for those choices so that they make the same choice again. Now, this all sounds a lot like parenting, doesn't it? Authoritarian parenting is that whole corporal punishment, you're grounded type of parenting. It's a lot like dominance and alpha theory. It's that same kind of, I must be in control of you. You're not going to be in charge of my house. This is my house. I'm the parent. Authoritative parenting is the idea of setting your kids up to succeed, being there to give gentle correction, gentle guidance, redirection, things like that for the wrong decisions. Susie, let's talk about why you made that choice. That was a bad choice, wasn't it? And what happened? Your friends decided they didn't want to play with you, didn't they? Are we going to make that choice again? No? Okay, good. Let's go get a snack. It's that kind of idea of, when you've got your little bit older kids, working with them and talking to them and teaching them and guiding them. When you've got younger kids, she's screaming just because she wants the Barbie, try to ignore her when she stops. Oh, good. You decided it's not that big a deal? Here, why don't you go play with this? It's that idea of positive but not permissive. Permissive parenting would be excessive anthropomorphism. Let's be honest, dogs are not humans. They have a lot of similarities. They've evolved with us. There's a lot of communication going on. There's a lot of similar behaviors going on, but they're still not us. And so to look at your 9-year-old dog and expect them to understand when you say, now don't you get in the garbage today, I have to be gone for a really long day, and it's not my fault you didn't poop on the walk this morning, and expect to come home and not have a mess. There's just certain things within their physicality. They don't have thumbs. They can't open doors. Well, most of them can't open doors on their own. But that kind of idea that there's, this excessive anthropomorphism, this ascribing too many human traits to the dog, that's the permissive parenting. And then, of course, there's uninvolved parenting, which is like having an untrained or ignored dog. We've all seen that dog who just kind of is in the house and hasn't really, maybe he's kind of been potty trained, doesn't sit, doesn't really come when you call him, barks when it wants. Kind of the same idea as that parent who's never really home and the kid's latchkeyed from 5 years old. So, what's going wrong? If we're parenting our dogs, if we're having more dogs in our homes and fewer children, if we're seeing this increase in my dog is my child, my dog is my surrogate baby, why are we seeing a resurgence in dominance, alpha theory, this idea of you must control your dog, instead of more benevolent parenting type practices? One possibility is that we've got some misrepresented data going on. Maybe we don't have as large of an increase in this idea of parenting our dog as we think we do. Or more concerningly, maybe we've got more going on behind closed doors at home with our dogs and our children than we think we do. Is it possible that we aren't the benevolent parents we say we are at home? We've got an image in public of the kind of parent we think we are and the kind of parent we want people to believe we are, because that's what's socially acceptable in our culture right now. But is that still who we are at home? And what will that tell us about why the training techniques are being chosen the way they're being chosen? A third possibility is that there's simply a lack of education. The power of the few. The right people at the right time can spread the word about this idea of you get more good things out of your dog with positive, calm, rewarding interactions. If you listen to your dog, so to speak, if you work with your dog understanding who they really are as a species, they're not wolves, and really start to focus on guiding them to become better, quote unquote, people, just like with our children. The more we don't have as many people that are doing that type of training, but the more power we can get to them, the more they can spread this word. So after all that, let me tell you a little bit about my future research. Like I said, I'm completing my MA, going on in to do my master's in anthropology, focusing on anthrozoology, focusing on this interaction between humans and dogs. And I want to get to the core of the human-dog bond. I want to figure out why it is that after thousands of years evolving together, we seem to have blanked out on what the dog species really is, and what its place in our lives and our history is. I also want to find out how we can protect and nurture that bond. How can we get over this hump of thinking that they're wolves and they're trying to take over the world, and instead, what data can we put together, and how can we get that data to people to help them see that dogs want to be loved just as much as we do. They want to be guided and given a chance to thrive and learn just as much as we do. And then most importantly, how can we improve the lives of the dogs we love? They always say you hurt the ones you love the most. And I think that that's really true with what's going on with our dogs these days. I think that more and more people really truly love their dogs. We even see it in dog fighting literature. These guys talk about how much they love their dogs, even though they're putting them in a fighting ring at night. And we need to find out why it is that we're doing these things, and how we can improve their lives. What can we learn, and what can we do differently? And how can we find out where we are so that we can figure out how to get us to a better place and get more of us really truly parenting our dogs? I want to say thank you for taking the time to listen to this presentation. I do want to let you know that I am available and happy to answer any questions. Here is my email address as well as my phone number. I welcome your calls. If you get my voicemail, please understand it can take up to 24 hours for me to respond. I am a grad student after all, as well as my email address. But I welcome interactions. I want to get this conversation going. I want us to all talk about what's the breakdown and how we can move forward so that our dogs are really being parented and are really being loved the way that we say we're loving them.